In every organization, there's one group holding the whole operation together. Not the top, not the bottom, the middle. Today, three of the sharpest minds in middle management step up to the mic. Sally Foley-Lewis, Jeff Sigel, and Robyn Wood. Each brings a different lens, one shared mission. Decode what it really takes to lead from the middle with confidence, clarity, and impact. Same questions, three perspectives. Get ready for insight that cuts through the noise and goes straight to the operational heartbeat of your organization. Let's dive in.
Do they have to be one or the other? Middle management's not either leadership or execution. I think it's kind of both. And sometimes if we pretend or act like otherwise, like one or the other, we miss out on great opportunities and leveraging, and we also set ourselves up for some failure. Things can go wrong. Middle managers, they're expected to lead people, execute strategy, translate decisions, manage risk, keep momentum moving, often at the same time, maybe in the same hour, very often in the same conversation. All right. When organisations frame a mid-level leader role as just execution, then they strip out any form of leadership authority they may have. And then middle managers become just task carriers. They have no decision shaping potential or opportunity. They're just doers. And then when organisations frame a mid-level leader as just a pure leadership role, then there's the risk of delivery suffering, because sometimes we still need people in these mid-level leaders to land the work. And I think the reality is middle management is a dual accountability role. Now, that can be quite daunting, it can be quite overwhelming, but I also think it's quite powerful. And I do believe middle managers are perfectly positioned in the most powerful position in organisations, because that dual accountability allows you to be able to ebb and flow between the execution and the leadership and blend them when required. Middle managers are accountable for outcomes and for people, for delivery and for direction. And I think that makes that pretty special. The real capability is not choosing one, it's knowing when to switch those modes. And when what's another way of looking at it? When to zoom out and lead, and when to zoom in and roll up your sleeves and execute. So when to do both without confusing your team as well. The middle is where strategy becomes real. And if leadership doesn't happen there, then it won't happen at all.
I very much agree with Sally's point about the fact that middle leadership is not about execution or leadership. It's about execution and leadership. You can't compartmentalize the middle leader role into one thing or the other, because the role is more complex than that. You are in the middle. You have to be able to get people, sort of excited and inspired to do things. You have to understand your team's goals and aspirations. You have to understand the incentives of the people around you, and you have to understand what it is that your boss is looking for. You have to do all those things. If you don't do all those things, you're going to not function very well in that role. But what's important to recognize is that it's not just middle managers misunderstanding their role that causes them to sort of blunder. What causes them to blunder often is a mix of them not understanding their roles, and the people above them not understanding their roles either. So if a boss is basically keeps telling their middle manager, direct report, this is what you need to do, this is exactly the way you need to do it, and not letting that person have some latitude to lead their team, they will literally limit the capacity of the team underneath them, because that middle manager is stuck. The only thing they can do is essentially pass along that micromanaging, right? So it's really important for the more senior leaders to understand, that this role in the middle, they need to cultivate their middle leaders to have both a leadership and an execution view of the world, that that their middle leaders are responsible for getting things done through others. And there's this idea, this really powerful idea of situational leadership, this idea that you have to lead differently in different situations. Well, I think that sort of applies even more so in this middle role, is you need to be able to sort of adapt and switch between roles, know what the right role is, know how to lead your people in the right way, know how to manage up to your leaders in the right way, know how to deal with the people around you in the right way. And if we can cultivate that, we will have people who both lead and execute at the same time, as opposed to trying to either put sort of pigeonhole them into one of those two boxes, and really limiting their ability to get to really get the most out of their teams and to really deliver the most for the company.
So my answer to this is probably going to be, or rather sound like a cop-out, but I genuinely believe that it's both. I think middle management is both a leadership role and an execution role. And I do think this is the source of many problems within businesses and what they're wrestling with when it comes to middle management. Is it there to lead or simply to deliver? And actually, I think the fact is it is both, and that's what needs to be acknowledged. I think historically, traditionally, middle managers have been seen as the doers, the ones who pass messages down, check work and make sure plans happen. But the world of work has changed. And actually, with AI, hybrid, automation, constant change, execution alone is no longer enough. And what is needed is really true leadership. And I would say execution is achieved at its most successful level when the leadership that has influenced and informed it is really strong. I think that is the ideal relationship there. So I think when we're talking about in 2026, execution is achieved through people and not control. And I think that is where the middle manager position is so crucial. But I do think it's where organisations can often get stuck. So they ask middle managers to lead, but treat them like operators. So they expect middle managers to coach, to engage, to innovate, to be resilient while measuring task completion and output. And that tension creates frustration and burnout for the individuals. So what I believe is that in 2026, great middle management integrates both. Leaders create clarity, direction, and trust while also driving results, not necessarily delivering them, driving them. So they influence rather than instruct. They coach rather than dictate, tell, or chase. They align people to purpose and then enable that execution to happen. So that's the real shift, I think, which is middle management is no longer about being the layer that gets things done. It's about being the layer that makes it possible for others to perform at their best to get things done. So I come back to the original question. Is it leadership or execution? It's leadership expressed through execution. And when organisations recognise that, the middle becomes a source of energy and momentum rather than pressure and fatigue for those who are in it.
You've just heard from 3 leaders who have dedicated their careers to strengthening the heartbeat of every organization, the middle. Sally Foley-Lewis has spent over 20 years in the trenches and the boardroom, working with more than 20,000 managers across industries and continents. She's a global award-winning speaker, author, and educator who equips managers to be confident, capable, and courageous, and delivers the tools that lift performance fast. Jeff Sigel brings more than 2 decades across global food, grocery, and restaurant giants and a mission to build better workplaces from the inside out. He's a coach, author of The Middle Matters, helping leaders at every level increase their impact. From Cape Town, Lisa Robyn Wood is the middle manager coach. Her own leap into senior middle management sparked the confidence crisis that transformed her life and career. Today, she helps managers rebuild their confidence, sharpen their self-awareness, and thrive through GRIP Coaching's practical, high-impact development programs. 3 experts, 1 shared passion, helping middle managers succeed where it matters most. Stay connected, keep developing, and keep leading from the middle.